Hey guys, Mattias, and in today's video I'd like to talk about the polarized world we live in today, where I see a bigger and bigger disconnect, or a bigger and bigger rift between us Europeans and our friends on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, the Americans. Now, we're basically the same people. You know, Americans, those Americans that have been credited for building up the country that we see today, the United States of America, are European descendants. And we do have a lot in common, not only the way we look, but politically and ideologically nowadays. It seems like we are drifting further and further apart. Now, in a way, this is very similar to the rift that you see between political ideologies within certain countries, and obviously, as we're talking about America now, between the Democratic Party and those who side with them, and the Republican Party and those who sides with the current sitting president, the 47th president of the United States. So, I'm pretty sure that most people will agree with me when and already have drawn this conclusion themselves, that media is much to blame for this. I'm pretty sure we know it. So I'm going to give you my point of view here, and I'd like to know if you agree, disagree, or if I have helped you maybe easier explain your point of view, because I see a lot of people, they kind of know what it is, but at the same time they have a hard time explaining it. So I'm going to do my best to try to explain it from my point of view, and we'll see if you will follow along, and if this is something you can take to heart. So, one of the things that I've noticed about what is commonly known as mainstream media in the United States is where the CNN, the MSNBC, the ABC, New York Post, Wall Street Journal, whatever. I could ramble for a long time, and I might be getting some of these news outlets wrong, but what you see in American news organizations is that mainstream media is very, very anti the current president, and they are very clear about it. There's no question that you see that these reporters and whoever's in charge of them really dislike the current president. There's no question. Now, in my country, Sweden, and from what I can tell from talking to people in other European countries, media reports basically the same things, but, and I can assure you this happens in Sweden, they only report negative about the current president, and they report basically the same thing as they hear from these news outlets that I just mentioned. But they present it in a way so that it seems like they are just reporting the news in a neutral and unbiased way. And if there is ever somebody that expresses his or her distaste for the sitting president, this is a person they bring in as an expert or a random guest on the panel, so that the news outlets themselves can still maintain the appearance of being neutral. Now, in Sweden, and this I am still trying to figure this out, but how this works, how people get fooled by this, is beyond me. But then again, I do watch a lot of the unedited live streams and videos from the Oval Office especially, and what's her name, Levitt, that blonde Speaker of the House. I really do appreciate how there is so much information coming out from sources that are unedited, whereas this is something that a lot of people in Europe haven't really gotten used to yet. You actually now have access to a lot of unedited footage so that you can get a non-biased take on whatever's being reported And yeah, you're actually also going to get the full news and not the cut out and edited version. Now, the fact that you have this access to the current president and his press secretary, I am convinced that this is a deliberate strategical decision made by said president, because he knows that media is going to lie about him, and he is therefore prepared this way. But there's another thing that is very unique to America, in my opinion. And we might have a lot of different opinions about this, me and you guys watching, but one of the things that I've seen emerging as a sorry, it's a little bit of, I'm a little allergic to spores, but one of the things I see as an emerging and fast-growing, very big business now in America is to have a podcast, be a YouTuber, whatever platform you're on, where your sole content, all your content is just fact-checking media and debunking whatever lies or whatever bias, whatever disinformation or desinformation or misinformation they're spreading. This has become huge in America. There's so many big names. I mean, obviously Joe Rogan comes to mind, even though, and the funny thing is, he's not even Republican. He is actually, according to himself, quite far to the left, which is still hard to believe, or maybe I misunderstood it. But that's one of the descriptions I've seen from him. Whereas he is celebrated a lot by Republicans for, especially for debunking a lot of the lies from mainstream media and also directly from the Biden administration in the past. Now there are plenty of others like Tim Pool, Charlie Kirk, and other. Now was it Ruben Report? There are so many. There's so many. I don't have it on top of my head now, but this is one thing when it comes to the political landscape and the media landscape that we in Europe really are missing. Now, the closest I can think of in Sweden that tried to do this was a group of people that call themselves Sweb TV, and they were just cancelled. They lost their YouTube account. They were growing pretty good, and they had a Facebook page that was quite popular and all that stuff. Some of their media is probably still out there, but they were just cancelled, and I never heard of them ever since. They may have emerged. I didn't check it out, but when that happened, that was kind of the end of anyone else trying the same thing. And of course, we have those more considered extreme on the right, those so-called far-right YouTubers and so on. Which is the irony here is that the worst the problems are in a country such as Sweden or Britain or Germany or whatever. If you are the kind of person that reports on that, the worse you sound reporting it, because what you're reporting on is really bad. But instead of people reacting to what actually happens, people have a negative and aggressive stance against the one reporting on it, calling that person racist, fascist, far-right. You know the slur, So, at least to my knowledge, in Europe, in Sweden, we do not have the equivalent of the Joe Rogans, so to speak, that actually fact checks and debunks the lies and the bias of mainstream media. Obviously, this is in combination with the fact that here media isn't as obvious about their lies as they are in, or their bias as they are in America. Because there's no question that all these, well, I just know the name of some of them that got fired. Well, the Don Lemon, Brian Stelter, Chris Cuomo. There is more. So maybe it just works better than I expected. To give the impression that you are reporting unbiased, when in fact they're just spreading the same political point of view, the same left-wing agenda that the American news outlets are so much more obvious about. It just seems to work. Now, do you agree or do you disagree? And obviously, right now, as I'm recording this, the big story is the fact that the left media and the Dems were hiding that Joe Biden was sick. And while it's most likely, well, according to even to people that are on the left side of this discussion, even like people like Jon Stewart are now saying that this is going to haunt them and they're going to need an outsider that is disconnected from the Biden administration in order to challenge whoever is going to replace the sitting president when the next election arises. So, yeah, what do you think? Now, I also want to point out that watching Swedish media, for example, there was basically no coverage at all about like the Lake and Riley Act, for example. Lake and Riley, nobody in Sweden knows about that. Nobody knows about that Garcia man. They talked about him for like a month, and it just got worse and worse and worse and worse. And when media finally, in Sweden again, finally decided to talk about, you know, Garcia, which is not what they talked about. They instead, they made an article that said, this is the torture prison that everybody talks about in America, and they span it that way. But they didn't even mention the MS-13 gang member, because you know, it wouldn't look good for the left. And well, if you're American and you've been following this story, just another embarrassment. You know, if you are if you if you're one of those politicians that went to El Salvador, live on a luxury hotel on the taxpayers' money in order to I don't know, in order to help a terrorist. I don't even know how to express myself. I wasn't prepared to talk about that. I should have sticked to my original plan here, because that is just mind-boggling. That is just mind-boggling. That guy, that senator sitting there having a drink with him, like it's like you couldn't make this shit up. Anyway, I hope that all these tariffs, the problems with the economy that we see, I think we might actually have even bigger problems in Europe than you have in America. But I hope that the tariff situation can be resolved. I believe, as many others, that this is just a negotiation tactics, and you know, I think Trump understands that he has some really strong cards in his hand. You know, that's the way he would kind of phrase it, even though Zelensky didn't understand that analogy all that well. I also hope that all these international problems, Ukraine, Gaza, India, South Africa now lately, I hope that Trump is really solving, like it's like he's giving the impression, it's like he has shown the world that he wants to be this peacemaker, and I'm starting to feel like maybe this was a mistake, because he's shown his hand. He can't play hardball the same way now, because he said that he otherwise could have done. He could have used a much tougher stance against some of these actors on the global scene if he didn't already reveal that he had in mind to be the peace president. But the fact that Trump wants to end killings, he wants to end wars, that doesn't really seem to give him any credit here in Europe. It's almost like they want the wars to continue just to make sure that said president isn't gonna get credit for it. Well, at least I shared my point of view from Europe, from Sweden, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. Meet me in the comment section below. Thank you for watching.